Because at that time you're young, right? And especially, I didn't really know the Bible. I mean, I kind of did, but I'd never read it. So I didn't have that background or that foundation. So I just remember there was some turmoil inside of me.
Just as I left college and entered adulthood, really began to say, okay, I've got the job part. I'm recently married. There's something missing. And went on kind of a process of figuring out, okay, what's missing? Both the challenge of it and the variability of learning a new business, learning a new marketplace, those were enjoyable challenges. However, I got to a place where in 2019, I recognized that, it just was not what I wanted to be doing long term.
Mr. Sean West, thank you so much for coming on the show. We're going to get straight into it and start with your testimony. How did you come to your faith in Christ?
Well, I grew up in a very faithful environment. Parents did a great job of getting us involved in a local church, and so grew up with a great foundation. And like many times will happen, went to college and had a lot of freedom and sort of didn't leave God necessarily, from the standpoint of saying, that's not true or I don't believe that, but just went on a process of exploration of what all the world had to offer, and a little too much of that. But then through a relationship in the marketplace, a client was a physical therapist that owned his practice, and we developed a relationship, and he had a real piece about him that I wanted more of, and began a process of kind of coming back to the faith and owning that for myself.
So what age do you remember knowing about Christ first? Can you pinpoint that?
Probably 7, 8, pretty young.
What kind of church did you guys go to?
It's a Baptist church in Nebraska. So I grew up in southeast Nebraska.
Was it kind of a small town?
Yes.
Yeah.
About 6,000 people. Siblings? Yes, I have one brother. He's about 5 years younger than I am. Yeah.
So then you went through high school. Would you say you were a good follower at that time of Christ?
Yeah, I would say pretty good, pretty involved in youth group and things like that, and very involved in sports and worked a lot. So I think it was like I said, a great foundation, and then just as I entered adulthood, left college and entered adulthood, really began to say, okay, I've got the job part. I'm recently married. There's something missing. And went on kind of a process of figuring out, okay, what's missing? So was your exploration, did that start in college, would you say? Yeah.
Yeah, mine too.
Yeah.
Once you for me, it was philosophy. Philosophy was kind of the faith tester. I took 2 classes of philosophy, and I just remember that if you were a Christian in that class, you're an idiot. And you just were not an intellectual person. Mm-hmm. And I just remember having to really defend my faith, even to my roommate, who was I think he was a history major with a minor in philosophy. I just remember late nights. But deep down, I was doubting. Because at that time, you're young, right? And especially, I didn't really know the Bible. I mean, I kind of did, but I'd never read it. So I didn't have that background or that foundation. So I just remember there was some turmoil inside of me. I don't know if you kind of went through the same.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's something you said there resonates, and that's not being in the Word and Scripture and knowing it for ourselves. And sadly, we find a lot of people, a lot of professing Christians in that category where maybe not making ourselves available to the Word of God on a regular basis and really knowing those truths. And so that's a huge call out.
What was your first career choice after college?
Yeah, so I got into sales, through a bit of necessity during college to make money through the process. Just kind of sold my way through school, and and worked a lot. Another thing about my upbringing is that my dad had his own business. And so from a very young age, I went in, after hours and so forth, and helped do everything from inventory to cleaning and all the entrepreneurial things.
What was the business?
It was a TV repair, TV and appliance repair shop. And back when we actually repaired those things instead of just going and getting a new one from Costco or Walmart. So
the big boxes.
Exactly.
Take the tube out or whatever.
Yeah, but that really imprinted a work ethic and an ownership mentality about what we do. And so carried that with me, and from probably senior year of college, knew that at some point I'd try to have my own business.
So that's when when did you start your first business? Was that right out of graduating college?
No, it took a little bit of time to sort of build a foundation. So went into sales. And
what were you selling then?
Yeah, I was selling copiers, and so sold office equipment for 3 years. Sold some various information management type solutions, storage of data and things of that nature. Sold consulting services and staffing services leading up until kind of the .com era. And then right after that is when the opportunity presented itself to sort of had a relationship with a client who had a need and wasn't being filled very well by the participants in the market. And so that provided the early launch pad for a business.
And what was that first business?
It was called Elevate, so a regional health information management provider. And so we would provide release of information services for doctors' offices and hospitals to be able to fulfill the need for people who wanted a copy of their medical record, but the facilities are not staffed often in a manner to be able to adjudicate all those requests. And at the same time, the privacy and HIPAA laws were really ramping up, so there was some trepidation about what they might let out the door and whether that was compliant. And so it was really right place, right time. And so that was a great journey from 2002 to 2010.
So then what was your role in that company when you first started it?
Sales? So chief cook and bottle washer. I mean, we started that with a partner, and we both did everything. And
but usually if you have partners, one of them was more in the behind the scenes, and I'm being very general here, and then the other one is more front and center. I'm guessing you were more...
I was more front.
Yeah. Doing the business development.
Right.
So what is the secret? Is it just get on the phone and just start making calls? What was your strategy to launch that business and make it or grow it to a sustainable level?
Well, I think certainly knowing the relationships that you want to have and having a vision for what success might look like. And I know that can be difficult and can sound challenging, but I think one of the things we did well there was to prioritize which relationships we really wanted to have, and knew that those wouldn't happen overnight, and knew that we were going to have to be persistent, that we were going to have to prove ourselves, we were going to have to give a lot. And so we just committed to that, and were able to secure over time. It took probably 3 or 4 years with one of the primary relationships to get into it to a degree that started taking us more regionally. But it was just a commitment that these are the relationships that we want to have, and we're going to go all in.
So you basically, it sounds like you guys selected a couple of companies that you wanted to go after, and you just stayed on them until they said yes?
Absolutely. We tried to be everything to them. So, not outside of our skill set, obviously, but we provided release of information services, but at the same time, as we headed into the early 2000s, the transition from paper records to electronic records became a big thing that was being pushed from the government, as well as a transition in those businesses. So we tried to ask a lot of questions around what challenges did that present to them. And so some of the same skill sets that we used in releasing information to the marketplace could be applied to helping them transition those records from paper to electronic and providing kind of ad hoc staffing just in time to help them achieve that goal. So we really tried to be that partner, and that really helped to solidify the relationships.
So it sounds like you guys really focused on your operations and your product and your service, so then you can stand confidently by it. So then when it's time for them to decide, then it's a no-brainer. How is what you guys did different than Cerner? Is Cerner similar to that?
Similar only in industry, really. So Cerner was the software product, right, where we were the service provider, one of the service providers that would come in and help transition those records so that they would be available and in the right place within the various EMR, EHR systems.
But you didn't have any background in this. You had a background in selling TVs.
Yeah.
What was your degree in?
That's the funniest part. My degree's in exercise science.
Oh, my goodness.
At one point in time, I thought I wanted to be a doctor, so I started my collegiate journey on that track and decided that wasn't it, and so transferred all the credits to say, who can get me out of here the fastest? I'm really enjoying this selling thing. I just want to go start life.
I don't know about you, but I think I used maybe 20% of what I learned in college, if not that, maybe even lower. Looking back, I almost feel like for me personally, I could have maybe skipped it and not, spent 4 years and a lot of money and still kind of do what I'm doing now. What are your thoughts on that?
I would agree. I mean, I think there's a real value to the experiences, and I just wonder how those valuable experiences could be compressed and intentionalized in a much faster track, sort of a return to apprenticeship type nature. And there's just such, the educational system, and I'm no expert, but, we've got a few hundred years only of doing it the way we do it. And prior to that, for much of human history, everything was learned from an apprenticeship perspective. And so kind of wonder if maybe there's some beauty and a little bit of return to that.
I feel like we're kind of going a little bit more towards the apprenticeship, more of the, what I call, we went from practical to concept and theory. And now we're maybe going a little bit more to the practical side of it. Because, for example, if you want to, be a plumber, then do you really need to dive deep into art history? Do you really need to dive deep into some of these other classes? It's just like checking the box, right? And collecting the money. But that's a rabbit hole that you definitely get deep into.
Another day.
Another day. So you said a coworker, or was it an employer that you said had influence on your faith as you got older? You want to dive a little deeper into that?
Yeah, sure. It was during the selling years, late 90s. And this was, my wife, Amy, and I got married in 1994. And we both grew up in a faith environment. And so probably 6 to 9 months after we got married, we were both kind of going, okay, we need to be a church. And so we kind of felt that pull to get involved, and we did. And I would say we were largely sort of going through the motions there and treating it as a check the box kind of a thing. And then I met this gentleman who, quite frankly, I didn't think he was real. I kind of had the Joel Osteen smile and a 3-inch wood cross outside of his lab coat. And I thought, no way. But I would literally, whenever I was close, I would pop back in, almost to see if I could catch him, and he was always like that and just had a sense of peace about him. And I really wanted that. It was attractive, somebody who had undeniable purpose. And so, that's really, I think, when the faith journey for both of us took off. We were fortunate to, begin a relationship with him, he and his wife, and that was very transformative, along with some others over the years in our lives.
Got married, and so many times I've interviewed people, the men especially, and it usually is the once you get married, the spouse or the wife kind of wakes us up a little. And the things that are most important. And I always say, for me personally, my wife helped me grow up real quick.
Absolutely.
So your resume is long, very diverse, and we can go a little bit deeper into that in a minute. But when did you know that you wanted to be a serial entrepreneur? Was it as a kid, or maybe later on?
Yeah, I don't know that I ever really consciously said I want to be a serial entrepreneur, but in my senior year of college, I felt that I really knew. It was about the time that my dad closed the electronics repair business, and I just thought, that was such an important part of me growing up, and as I made that transition that I mentioned from pre-med to exercise science to just be done with school. I really enjoyed selling things, but I was really enjoying the relationship with the owners. So two of the places that I worked during college were really cool environments. They were family-owned businesses, and these guys were real givers. They had not only an income and a business, but they utilized the business to benefit the community. One was a clothing store, and they did a lot of things that people didn't know about. And they treated the workers that worked at the clothing store, all of us college punks, they treated us really well. And it was a really great environment. And so being in those kinds of environments, I knew that I wanted that down the road. But of course, you get done and with school, and I didn't know exactly what kind of a business I wanted to have. So I just decided that I would take the opportunities that were presented to hone my sales and business development skills to the best of my ability until such time as the opportunity presented itself.
So how many businesses have you had, and even including today?
Well, and that's the funny thing is that I've been involved in a lot of businesses, but part of the reason for a lot of the varied experiences is when we sold the business in 2010 to a private equity company that was doing a roll-up in that marketplace. And so joined them to help grow that. And that led to a period of about 10 years of being involved in various private equity sponsored projects.
Got it.
And so those would be varied in terms of what kinds of businesses they were buying and what they were asking me to do. And so that was largely responsible for a lot of the varied experiences that I've had.
Did you enjoy that?
I did, in the sense
going into all the different types of businesses.
Right. Both the challenge of it and the variability of learning a new business, learning a new marketplace. Those were enjoyable challenges. However, I got to a place where in 2019, I recognized that it just was not what I wanted to be doing long term. Felt less and less genuine as I would go in and meet with a team, kind of knowing that the outcome was pretty certain in a pretty short period of time, that there was going to be a flip of some kind. And so
what was the average number of years that they wanted you guys to flip a business?
Well, in the beginning, it was 3 to 5 years. So that'd be around the 2010, but the timeframes were significantly compressed as you went from 2010 later in the decade. And so by the time 2017, 2018, just the first big check, really. So a lot of these would say, they have a multi-year thesis or projection, but there can be a lot of things that influence that.
So what about that? What about it? That whole process of going into business, was it maybe feeling like you were going in there and ripping their business away from them?
No. I think there's some really good things that people can learn from the private equity space, and there's a lot of good discipline and rigor and things that those companies can bring to the table in an ideal setting. As I kind of wrapped up that decade, what I really kind of came away from it with is the most fun I've ever had at that point was in my own business. And so, I wanted to return to that, but I wanted to take some of the things that I had seen and learned that were good and bring those back to business owners to help them flourish. And the way I say it is that they could own the business rather than be owned by the business. And so that was kind of something that I think was on my heart at that time, and started a couple businesses in early 20. Great time to start a business, by the way. Yeah, absolutely. Recommend it highly. And, the purpose for that was really to help businesses flourish, like I said, in a better, help business owners specifically to be able to accelerate their success and do it in a way that they could enjoy. I found over the time period of being involved, a lot of the people who sell their businesses that I discovered is they may not really want to sell the business. They just don't know what to do next, and they're tired.
What was your first business's name? What was it called?
Elevate.
Elevate, that's right. So Elevate, how long did you have the business before you sold it to the PE?
8 years.
So what was the deciding factor for you to sell it to the PE? Because I know that was a big decision. What was that thing that nudged you and say, let's do this?
It was the opportunity. Specific to that group, I really felt it was twofold. There was a little bit of a financial incentive naturally,
of course, yeah.
And we had been bootstrapping a company, and from 2010 to 2006 or 7, it was a struggle, and then it started to ascend. And so there was a real, sought out a lot of counsel on that in terms of, is this the right time? We were just approaching a point where we might be able to, we weren't there yet, but we could see a pathway toward, hey, maybe we could add a tuck-in type acquisition on. So do we keep plowing along for a few years and with the goal of doing that? But this group specifically provided an opportunity to make this business that we had run an important part of a national roll-up to contend for leadership in the space, and being able to come in and lead their national sales team and bring some of the things that we had done to the consolidated business was a real challenge, and I embraced that.
How did it feel going from being your own boss to now having to report to someone?
In that environment, it wasn't bad. It really wasn't bad. Later, it got a little tougher. Again, it's all depending on the people. Yeah. And I was really blessed to have that first experience. Keep in touch periodically with the CEO to this day that bought that company, and have remained friends. And it was a good group.
If you go back in time and talk to yourself during that moment of selling it or not, would you tell yourself something or to do something differently? Would you really do anything differently looking back with that whole process?
I really don't think I would. Yeah.
Because a lot of people struggle with that. I know of people who are actually in the middle of doing it now. Mm-hmm. And the obstacles that you have to overcome include now having to report to someone. And really, I think the biggest one is identity. Mm-hmm. I've been approached, and that's something where I know that it would be difficult for me because I've been doing this for almost 20 years. This is like who I am.
Right.
And now you sell part of yourself to someone else.
Yeah, it's not that it's easy necessarily, but I do think that's part of that ownership journey that is a good thing. There's another edge to that can be challenging for us as we have our identity fully immersed in that, as opposed to
Christ,
as opposed to what God's purpose is for our lives. Yeah. But and I didn't have that really named at that point in time. I won't pretend that, but I think the big thing was our family was at a point where it probably made sense for us to do that. And the opportunity was great. The people were great. And so I won't say that I haven't revisited that decision in life periodically to say, why did I do that? But each time it's come back to, hey, that was really a blessing.
I always tell myself, looking back and maybe feeling regret on certain things that happened and the decisions that were made, and I'm always assured that God's providence is perfect. His will is perfect, and how things came about is how he wants them. Mm-hmm. Even though I don't understand, or maybe I question it, but my tiny little pea brain is nothing compared to the infinite mind of God and his glory and power. So let's talk about CBMC. When did you become part of that?
So Christian Businessmen's Connection entered in midway through 2020. So I'd already started a couple of these businesses, and a friend of mine had come to a couple of the masterminds that I was doing for business leaders, consistent with what I'd mentioned previously. And he just said, do you remember, we'd both gone to church, same church with a gentleman named Gary Tenpenny, and he said, do you remember Gary, and do you know what they're doing at CBMC? And I said, no, I knew of Gary, but I had no idea what CBMC was. And so he invited me to come check it out. And I walked into a peer group cohort, whatever language you want to use to describe a group. But I walked into this group and really started understanding a little bit more about the organization. I thought, wow, this is something that if I had anything to change about that business experience that I mentioned, it would have been to have, a group like that around me at that time. Mm-hmm. And so really became acquainted with this organization that is 94 years old, ministry, worldwide, and focused on the marketplace and trying to present Jesus to businessmen around the world and help develop and equip them to carry out the Great Commission. And so as I leaned more into that, there was really a resonance with that desire I had coming out of private equity type projects and wanting to help business owners. And then this integration of faith into that was just a wonderful connection.
So CBMC is really for Christian men who are in their workplace, and then you guys get together kind of on a monthly basis, I guess?
Depending on the groups. We have groups that are connection groups that meet weekly. We also have cohorts that I mentioned that are monthly groups. We also have one-on-one relationships. Discipleship is a huge pillar of our organization, and so there's a 50-year-old pathway or platform for discipleship we have called Operation Timothy, and that's just a name leveraging the Paul-Timothy relationship, and that platform has been around for 50 years, and so it's incredible the number of men and women who have been discipled utilizing that curriculum or platform, and it's naturally been updated a few times over the years. And we just recently launched in June a new online platform that's mobile first and really a tremendous tool for people to be able to navigate a discipleship journey one-on-one. And we find that a lot of people have never been discipled. May have been exposed to faith, may have been exposed to church and more of a corporate worship style, but never had a relationship where they could go deep. They had the safety of being able to explore questions and challenges of faith and really be presented with a pathway to explore what are the big life questions. And then if I'm going to embrace this Christian life, what is my new identity in Christ? And how do I navigate that? And then lastly, how do I multiply my life? What does that mean now that I'm kind of an insider? I'm a Christian and I've adopted this and fully believe. And what does that mean for my life? And so what does that look like? So this platform helps people walk through that. And it's been amazing. It's been the most transformative part of what we do. So the peer groups are great. Events are great. Weekly groups are great for connection and support and getting to know people, pray with each other. those are all wonderful things. But the number one transformation that we see happens in those life-on-life relationships.
Is it like a mentor-mentee type of relationship?
Somewhat, like I said, it leverages Paul Timothy, 2 Timothy 2:2, where Paul says to Timothy, take these things that I have shown you and taught you, and entrust them to faithful and reliable men who will do likewise. And so we get this picture of spiritual reproduction there. But we encourage people not to get hung up on those titles. It's not so much the mentee becoming it's not a mentorship relationship in essence. It's focused on Christ. And so it's just two people focused on Christ through the platform. And as I've had the opportunity to go through this platform myself several years ago, and then now when I have the privilege of being able to walk other guys through this platform, I'm learning as much as they are every time through. And so it's certainly not a hierarchical relationship.
So then who would be the ideal candidate for CBMC? Is there an ideal age range? Obviously, it's for males.
Yeah, we're a men's focused ministry. Yeah. And so men in the marketplace, whether young, older, we meet guys right where they are. And so we have men involved in CBMC that are quite a bit older, who are really active in engaging with other men in the marketplace. We have young guys. We have a young professionals team where that's a cohort that we specifically focus on those young guys and the emerging leaders. And so regardless of occupation, regardless of age, there's an opportunity. We just want to come alongside men in the marketplace and support them in their journey and help them to live out the purpose that God's called them to. We're not, as Christians, all going to be pastors or be called to be pastors. Mm-hmm. However, God certainly gives us a sphere of influence and a vocational calling. And so we certainly believe that we're called to be salt and light right where he has us.
So you received training from the Maxwell Institute or John Maxwell?
I did. In 2018, I leaned into that. I back to, 99, 2000, really enjoyed all the Maxwell content, and so had long been a reader of his different material. And then in 2018, I decided to lean in more to that from a coaching perspective. So joined the John Maxwell team and became certified from a coaching and training perspective. And that's been a wonderful journey.
Did you learn anything about leadership? Was that part of it?
A little bit, yeah, absolutely. So there's the material is heavy on leadership and servant leadership at that. And so, John having his faith background and really come through from a servant leadership perspective really fit nicely and, hand in glove with where I was at worldview.
I bet you've met a lot of business leaders, whether it be business owners or just leaders in the workplace. Is that true? Mm-hmm. What do you think is the commonality with those who are extremely effective as a servant leader in their workplace? Assuming you've met those people who are in that realm.
I think there's a couple things that come to mind in terms of commonality. There's humility. There's a sense with those leaders that there are things bigger than themselves and bigger than the quarter they're in or the project they're on. So that humility and awareness is a big thing that I think comes to mind in terms of commonality. And then the sense of purpose. So pretty much to a person, the people that would come to mind with that description usually have a pretty firm sense of their purpose.
That's good. And today you have how many businesses? You have two?
Of two.
Yep. One of them is it the virtual assistant? Can you dive a little bit deeper into that business?
Sure. One is a virtual assistant business, and I have a partner in that business, and we connected somewhere along that private equity journey that I mentioned, and we knew people around the world and had a real respect for the capacity, the capability of people around the world. And during COVID, there was a tremendous hardship for business owners, specifically and leaders, to find people that would be able to help and would be interested in working or could work. And so it was really just about filling a need at first. And then that really kind of leveraged into part of the overall helping business leaders and owners flourish and helping them to take things off their plate that they shouldn't be doing. And I'm kind of talking to myself when I say that. I mean, everybody is probably pretty familiar with the wearing all the hats kind of vernacular. And, what I like to say is there's usually about 3 of those hats that we're wired for and we're good at. And there's 3 of those hats that we're probably mediocre at, but we just do them anyway. And then there's three of those hats that we have no business wearing and we should really delegate. And that's the biggest thing I see with emerging leaders, business owners, is a real gap in delegation.
I'm listening. How do you decide when it's time to delegate? So, for example, I do way too much, and there are certain tasks that I probably should have delegated a long time ago, but it's expensive. It's extremely expensive to be able to have somebody else do that job. When do you think is a good time to take that leap and just let it go? But then also know that you're going to have to pay for it.
Absolutely. Well, I would imagine, it's different. There's no one size fits all to this. It kind of depends, very circumstantial, depends on budget as well as what those things are. Probably a big reason why I find people don't delegate is time. It's not money.
Right.
If I slow down long enough to explain and train how to do this, I can already have it done.
Yes.
And I'm just going to go.
Yeah.
So to me, it's not really about the cost financially, it's the cost of our time. And so that really can be unpacked in terms of what is our overall goal. And if the growth of our business or venture requires other people, then we have to suck it up.
That's one of my favorite terms there.
Because if almost all businesses are going to be grown if there's other people involved. And so do we care for those people? Do we develop those people? Do we lead those people? So Terry Cook wrote a book, Lead, Develop, Care. And that's where that framework comes from. And we usually have, as leaders, we have a strength in one of those areas, a stretch, and a struggle. So I may be good at leading, but perhaps I have a bit of a blind spot regarding taking the time to actually develop people. And, I might care for them, but my real blind spot is maybe development, or it could be vice versa.
What are the 3 again?
Lead, develop, and care.
So you could have somebody leading, developing, but then they're not really staying in there to care for that person.
Yeah, do the employees feel known, connected with, valued? And somebody might have a strength in that area, and their blind spot may be that they fall down a little bit in terms of leadership and maybe aren't the best in terms of motivating or managing what needs to happen in order for the organization to grow.
Because a lot of times people will also lead, care, but then not develop. Hey,
Absolutely.
You're doing a good job. But then they don't sit there and actually help them get better, because that takes a lot of time and effort.
It does.
Yeah.
It takes a tremendous amount of time and effort.
So going back to your business, most of your team is from the Philippines, right?
Yes.
For that one. I have to give a shout out to the guy who's in the Philippines who produces this show. I sent him all the videos, and he completely does an incredible job. So if you're editing this right now, I just want to give you a big pat on the back because you're doing a great job. But I have to also mention the work ethic of the Filipinos, oh my goodness, it's incredible. And I always say, we Americans, we better be watching out because they're going to be taking our jobs.
Absolutely. Well, even just culturally, the importance of faith and family. When you visit the Philippines, and I'll be back there in April for a period of time, and it's definitely something that when you're there, you say, "Gosh, we need more of this."
Just the family and taking care of each other.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I think it comes back to, I think it's the consequence of prosperity. That's where we are now as Americans. We have it so good after World War II, had the boom. We don't really have as many obstacles as maybe somebody who's in a third world country. So then we start creating things to complain about and battles, really. We like to battle, we like to fight, so we just come up with things. But then in the third world countries, they have real battles to fight, whether it be feeding their kids or an actual battle. So when you have that, it forces them, not forces, but maybe encourages and motivates them to stick together and not really fight over the little differences amongst each other and know that there's a bigger cause that they're fighting for. What
Absolutely.
do you think? Yeah.
I agree wholeheartedly. And I think whether it's in family or in business or even in church organizations, we look at where the church is growing the fastest in our world. Right?
Yes.
In the most persecuted environments in our world is where the church is growing the fastest. And some of those things are stripped away and you are laser focused on what truth is. It's easier to come together and make things happen.
What's your other business?
The other business is an in-home care business. It serves people in Topeka and Western Kansas.
And then you go in and is it the elderly that you're taking care of? Is that a franchise or is something you just started?
No, it's a company that we purchased that was started in 2011 by a family, and we had a kind of an interesting and amazing connection to them, and it's been a journey that we entered again at a very inopportune time, just pre-COVID, and so. Yeah,
that was difficult during COVID.
A little bit
to go in their houses, and then they are the elderly.
Yeah,
those are the ones we really had to watch out for with their health.
Yeah,
I can only imagine how difficult that job is, but also one of the most rewarding, fulfilling is taking care of those people in their house.
You hit it. There's really no middle ground, and I have to compliment the team that run does everything day to day, and it's kind of a peak and valley type experience where it's the frustrations can be very high, but then as you said, the joys are there as well.
So do you have any advice that you would give to those who are aspiring to be an entrepreneur? I think today it's kind of a buzzword. Go on YouTube, all these YouTubers, everybody wants to be an entrepreneur. Do you have any advice for those folks?
Well, it's a tremendous time. There's so many people, technology and social media. I mean, there's a lot of ways that you can tap into people who are either in that journey right now or have been in that journey and can share a lot of wisdom. So it's a much different, probably sound a little old when I'm saying this, but it's a much better time, I feel like, to be an entrepreneur now than say 20, 25 years ago. You just have a lot more access to voices. Now, the downside to that, or the challenge with that, the opportunity is to really vet those voices.
Yeah.
And probably the biggest thing that I would share and do share with people who are aspiring to be an entrepreneur is to know your purpose, regardless of which business you enter or exit or the opportunities that are presented, to evaluate who you are. What do you believe? What ultimately are you trying to achieve? And to really know yourself so that you hopefully choose the right opportunities, but more important, you choose the right people to be involved with, whether it's hiring them, being, whether they're going to be a supplier, whether they're going to be an investor. When you do that work to know yourself and to know your purpose, that's the lens that you can then see the right people to work with and the right opportunities to take and put yourself in a much better chance of not just financial success, but overall flourishing. And then the other side of that is when we really know our purpose, it helps us to not get as attached from an identity perspective with the operation itself.
Why should men get involved in CBMC?
Well, I go back to my own story. I have a great church home, and when I was going through, do I sell, do I not sell? I went to our senior pastor and said, hey, I really want to connect with some guys that can help. And he was fantastic. And I called these guys up and said, can I buy you coffee? And with 2 or 3 of them, that started a relationship that has been amazing, to this day. And I had to pursue that. That wasn't, generally what was maybe happening in the other parts of my church experience. And so why, a guy should get involved in CBMC is if you are a Christian in the workplace, a Christian man in the workplace, confronting and all of what we have in front of us today and the race that's set before us, I would encourage you not to do it alone. And CBMC is an organization that is about presenting Jesus in the marketplace and developing and equipping Christian leaders to make disciples. And so, when it's the last thing Jesus said before he ascended, and it was a command, not a request, or a good idea, or a podcast you should listen to. It was go, as you go, make disciples. And so that's what we help men do in the marketplace and right where God's called them to be.
So if anybody's listening and they want to contact you, get in touch with you, or even learn more about CBMC, where would you point them?
Yeah, in Kansas City or the central Midwest, as we call it, cmw.cbmc.com is our website. They can certainly reach out to me and be happy to help. And then more regionally or nationally, cbmc.com.
And I'll add those links to the show notes. But Mr. West, this has been an absolute pleasure. Thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah, appreciate it.